We've heard a lot of rumors over the years about a cancelled Kid Icarus game for the Wii, and Unseen64 was able to dig up some info. Nintendo asked Factor 5, the company behind Star Wars Rogue Squadron, to create a new Kid Icarus game. They sent them a character model for Pit, which was pretty much ripped from his appearance in Brawl, but Factor 5 instead made a prototype for a darker game featuring an adult Pit. I really recommend you guys check out the full video. You can find it on Gamnesia, on YouTube. It's super informative and really interesting. Ultimately, though, the project was cancelled. It sounds like it was mostly a result of this darker direction with the adult Pit and everything, which Nintendo did not seem to appreciate. Especially when they sent them, the whole, here's what Pit looks like.
Yeah, inevitably, I think it was the right decision. I think Kid Icarus is an old enough franchise, and a franchise that, since they'd already given it the spotlight in Brawl, was not one that they really needed to be tampered with from a sort of visual identity perspective. Mm-hmm. Certainly not making it an adult game when it's already this kind of sort of niche Nintendo quirky game that would completely change the tone, I think, of Kid Icarus, which I am not in favor of. I think Sakurai actually wound up doing a really great job, even if the mechanics didn't really resemble the original Kid Icarus at all.
Right, the tone of it was great.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think some of the story concepts in this were really, really cool. There's one particular standout to me where Pit is banished from Skyworld in his younger years for some alleged crime against the heavens. It starts out in Skyworld, you're playing as, the kid Pit, and then he's banished, time passes, it's kind of like Ocarina of Time, then you become adult Pit, and he spends many years in the overworld training and becoming this more of an earthen warrior. He's more hardened, he's a bit less of an innocent and energetic boy, but ultimately I think it's for the better that this fell through, like you said. I'd love to see some future games take some story cues from a concept like that, but it's so radically different from Nintendo's vision for the series. I don't think it would have been healthy for anyone to see that project through to its end.
Right, and especially since it had been so long since we had a Kid Icarus game, and then to, change it so drastically. I mean, that is a tactic that you can use if you want to rebrand it and establish a new audience, but, Nintendo's not super interested in letting other people completely rebrand their established IP.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that would have worked if they had not brought Pit back for Brawl. If it had been dormant and then they revamped it with this, that would have worked fine, I think.
Right, but Brawl created this expectation.
Exactly.
Colin, you brought up an interesting point about how the story treatment actually was one of the most interesting parts, and I think a lot of that has to do with this really kind of radical difference in the way Western studios approach lore and consistency versus Japanese studios, and particularly Nintendo, where the story really, really, really takes a backseat. I mean, we saw with Metroid Prime, Retro Studios was really careful not to tamper with the Metroid story that people knew, and they would just kind of added another chapter onto it. And they were very faithful to the Metroid universe that had been built up to that point. Mm-hmm. So I would actually like to see Nintendo pitch their less-known IP or IP that they don't know what to do with to studios like this. Especially... Yeah, Mach Rider. The ones that are really ripe for exploration from a lore perspective. Of course, I don't know if current Nintendo will do anything like that. They reined Metroid back into the SPD group from Retro, but... I mean, anything's possible.
Hello everybody, thank you for listening to this Nintendo Week clip, NWC. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to us here on YouTube for more highlights and discussion videos from Nintendo Week podcast, or subscribe to us on iTunes for weekly breakdowns of all your Nintendo news, discussion segments on subjects, games, and more, and tons of other features. Thanks for listening, and we will see you tomorrow with another NWC.